welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. My name is Brandy, and this week we are going to be working on this piece that's behind me, and it's already been transformed, so I don't want you to see too much of it, but I'm going to give you a little bit of spoilers, and that is, if you guys haven't already seen, that Wiesel Paint came out with a new collection called the Luxury Earth Collection. It is 7 colors that are beautiful and earthy and natural and inspired by nature, and it's these 7 colors that are behind me here. And I am going to put some of them to use on this piece. We're going to make it over. It's a well-made piece from Bassett, only it was a little outdated, and we need to bring it a little bit more modern. So you guys stick around. I'm going to show you how to brush with Wiesel 1 Hour Enamel, how to update a piece that's a little bit dated but still really good quality. I think you guys are going to like this video. Let's get started. Here's where I started on this piece, and I actually got this piece from a customer. She brought me one of the pieces of the set to do for her as a custom, and then she left me this dresser. They didn't have a use for it. They had already ordered a new bedroom set, so that's a really cool way. Sometimes the connections that you make can lead to beautiful pieces for your inventory. This piece is in remarkably good condition. The top has a little bit of crackling in the existing finish, but that's okay because I want to do a two-tone finish, and that means taking this top back to raw wood. So I start off by using my Surf Prep sander with an 80 grit paper and taking this all the way back to bare wood. After my 80 grit, I'm going to go to a 120 and then a 220, and I'm also going to sand the sides and the front down just about a third of the way, and that's because I want to carry that two-tone finish just onto part of the body of the piece. Next, I taped off a line around the body of my piece where I wanted that two-tone finish to stop, and then I'm just going to brush over my tape using clear coat. And the clear coat is going to keep any paint that I put underneath that tape line from bleeding underneath. The bleed through is going to go through as the clear coat, and I won't get any seepage from my paint. This is going to give me a nice clean paint line. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and brush on 1 Hour Enamel on these drawers. I want to show you how this product brushes. So I'm going to use one of my Kling-On brushes. This piece has been primed on these drawers. I'm going to dip my brush into the 1 Hour Enamel just about, what's that, a ½ inch? And I do fill my brush a little bit more with the 1 Hour Enamel than I do with a chalk style paint. And I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to pull my paint out to the edges. And on this one, I want to go ahead and get this drawer edge, so I'm going to do that with a vertical brush stroke. And then I'll come brush over this again where it meets up with the drawer front. For my next stroke, I'm going to go ahead and fill my brush again, start in the middle, and I'm going to brush out to the edges, and then I'm going to come clean that up with a brush stroke that goes all the way across. I do have a fuzz in my paint right there, so I'm going to grab that out and then go right back through it. Once I've gone over my paint, I'm going to try to avoid going back through it, and that's because it does start to set up fairly quickly, and I want to keep it as clean as possible from brush strokes. So I'm going to repeat this process all the way down, filling my brush, start in the middle if possible, and then pull my paint to the outer edges, and then come through and give it a nice, clean, long, linear brush stroke. I'm going to do the edges of this drawer, and this side. And I'm going to set this aside. Now I know that I can see some spots of my primer through that. If you want to come in close, I'll show you guys that you can see a little bit of streakiness on this initial coat. When I come back for my second coat, we are going to completely cure that. So if you see some streakiness on your first coat, don't let it panic you. Let's go ahead and do this next drawer. Okay, and that quickly, I've got 2 drawers that are going to dry, and I'm going to come back to these in about 2 hours, and I'll go ahead and put on my second coat. With that beautiful coat on my drawers, I'm going to go ahead and come over to my body and start laying the coat on there. I'm going to follow the same process. So I load my brush up a little heavier with the 1 hour enamel, and this is my first coat, so I am going to have a little bit of the wood that I could still see through, but that's okay because I'm going to need more than one coat. I'm going to brush right up to that tape line that I created, and I've already got that clear coat over the tape nice and dry, so I know that my paint will not seep through that tape. I'm just going to brush around all of the body using those nice long even linear strokes, working one small section at a time, making sure that I don't have any drips. This is a thinner formula, so it does get great coverage. That doesn't affect the coverage at all, but you just want to be really careful that you don't have any excess paint that's dripping in those corners. I do paint underneath where the drawers meet up with the body, and that's because when the drawers are pushed in, I don't want to see any of those wood edges. I want to see only my paint where the paint is supposed to be. I use these wood trim details that are inside the body of the piece as a good guide for where I should stop and start my paint. 1 hour enamel dries to the touch at about 2 hours, and you can come back and put your second coat on, and then it's got a full cure of about 4 hours. This fast cure time makes it an excellent choice for doing kitchens and bathrooms because you're able to put them back into play pretty quickly without having a lot of time out of use. I did end up painting this bottom trim of the piece, and I already knew that I wanted to take it off, but I hadn't taken it off at this point, so I figured I just need to sand any areas once I took this trim off. I just went ahead and painted it while it was on the body. In the future, I would recommend taking that trim piece off and fixing that before you do your paint. So next, let's come and work on the top section of this. I told you this was going to be a two-tone finish, and my second color is also the 1 hour enamel, and this color is called Fauna. This is going to be a really popular color for doing whitewash wood looks. It's not a perfectly pure white, but it just has the perfect amount of beige so that you get a nice bleached wood tone without it being too fake looking. These top drawers were sanded down to completely raw wood, and I just used a mist of water to wet the wood so that the paint glided over top. I made sure and worked it into all the grain, and then I'm just going to brush a really thin coat of that 1 hour enamel over the raw wood, and this gives me that bleached wood look that I'm after. Here, if I put the raw wood drawer next to my bleached wood look, you can see the look that I'm getting from the paint. It's exactly what I was looking for. So I told you that I wanted to remove that bottom trim on this dresser. I went ahead and unscrewed it from underneath and then popped it off using a hammer, but now I need to cut off this excess trim that's on the bottom of the piece. I'm just going to do that using a circular saw and run it in a nice clean line along the bottom of the dresser. I did this just after my first coat of paint, so it will need a little bit of touch up from the saw running over the top, but that's okay. I sanded down those edges and caught that all with my second coat of paint. I am getting help here from my lovely assistant, Sean. I super appreciate when he comes in and helps me with some of this stuff. I ran this same line all the way around all 3 edges of the dresser, and this gave me a nice flat bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and attach legs underneath. It was pretty easy to know where to put my cut line because once I took that trim off, I had a portion of the dresser that just was excess wood underneath, and that was a really easy place to know where to cut. It also was where the veneer on the outside of the piece stopped, and so it was a perfect place to just get rid of that excess. You always want to make sure that you measure twice and cut once when you do this kind of stuff. You definitely don't want to mess up cuts when you're doing this. I also looked underneath for where the weight of this piece was bearing, and it was on the 4 outside corners, so I was able to remove all of this excess trim without affecting the weight distribution of the dresser. It's a pretty heavy piece, so that was important. Now that that bottom is all done, I want to pay attention to the top. And so I took this back to raw wood. I'm going to give it that same bleached wood look that I gave to those dresser drawers. So I'm using that mist of water, and right over top of the raw wood, I'm brushing on a super thin layer of the Wiesel 1 hour enamel in this color Fauna. Fauna, I think, is going to be one of my most used colors in this line. It's absolutely the perfect tone for doing some of these faux wood finishes. So I used it on another project that I'm working on, some faux wood beams for my house. I did a wash of it over leather wood, and it was the perfect combination. So I think it's going to be really popular for that. It's just slightly deeper than an ivory, and so it's got a beautiful wood look. This thin coat of paint still let some of my wood grain show through, and then using that little bit of water helps my brush to glide over the surface. Anytime I get a little more paint than I wanted, I can just come back and wipe it away and go ahead and repeat the process. I ordered these legs off of Amazon. They're sort of pencil legs, a little bit modern looking, and so I gave them a scuff sanding just using a little bit of sandpaper, and I'm going to give them the same bleached wood look that I gave to the top of my piece. So I added a little bit of water, and I'm brushing that really thin layer of fauna on, still letting some of that wood grain peek through. My legs are on this piece, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit about the construction of this because each piece is a little bit different. So when I took this piece apart, I had trim on both sides like this. That's upside down, but you get the point. And then it had a block in this corner that held the weight. And so this block is where the weight of the dresser was. So I looked at that and tried to repeat putting my weight on the same parts of the dresser. So in this case, when I removed this, I was left with this wood here. And this leg would fit on this piece of wood. So on this part, I would have been okay. But down here at the bottom, this piece of wood was not wide enough to fit my leg, so I had to add another support in there. So I had to reinforce this bottom with a little bit of extra wood, and then to make it the same height as this front leg, I added a little block in the corners, so it's nice and stable, and my weight is all on the same part of the dresser that the weight was originally. With those legs attached, I put on my existing hardware, and this piece is done. This paint does not require a top coat, so with 2 coats of paint, my look is complete. I staged this clean modern piece with a clean modern piece of artwork and a simple vase of flowers. This one is done. What do you guys think? You can find links for everything I used in the description for this post. As always, you can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. If you enjoyed this video, please click that subscribe button for more weekly painting tutorials at Brush by Brandy on YouTube.